CBS News anchor and managing editor Scott Pelley will be joining us just in moments. Some of the victims of Tuesday's deadly train derailment were treated at Aria Hospital. Scott Pelley spoke with 3 doctors at that hospital.
In the emergency room, we spoke to Dr. Gerald Wydrow, Dr. Cynthia Fosco, and Dr. Rob Danoff.
The patients that you saw, what were their injuries?
We had broken ribs, we had a fractured neck, we had spinal cord injuries, we had pelvic fractures, some head trauma. So it was a variety of what we say blunt trauma.
Rob, some of the patients spoke to you about their experience. What did they tell you?
And one was a conductor. He was actually on the train going to his job, the next destination. He was in the cafe car. He said he was talking normally. All of a sudden, and this was common with people, they heard this loud screech. The next thing he remembered was he woke up spitting out dirt. He was on the side, and he remembers seeing a Philadelphia police officer asking if he can help him. Another woman was someone who every week, 4 times a week, she's on that same train. She's always in the first car. This time, she said her secretary couldn't get it. She was at first annoyed. She said, "Oh, why didn't you give me the first car?" But when I talked to her, you know, she had a concussion, but she was understanding. I said, "You know what? Your life was probably saved because the worst injuries were in the first and second cars." So she was really grateful.
What impressed you about last night? What did you see that you'll never forget?
Last night, the parking lot where the ambulances come in was full of mass transit buses, police vans, ambulances, and we had an orderly triage and treatment of patients, well over 30 at the same time.
CBS News Evening anchor and managing editor Scott Pelley is joining us now. Scott, you could hear there, we were listening to your discussion with some of the experts at the hospital. I would imagine a lot of the people that you're speaking to on the ground are really still in a state of shock.
Well, that's true, Vanita. One of the things they told us at the hospital was how everyone who came in, no matter how slight their injuries, were clearly in a state of shock, dazed by what happened. It's very clear to us now that this happened quite suddenly with no warning. You heard the doctor talking about the man who said he just suddenly woke up spitting dirt out of his mouth. We were flying over the disaster scene earlier today in a helicopter, and what you could see from that was that the electric engine that had been pulling the train had been thrown far clear of the rest of the cars. But the first 2 cars in the train apparently hit some of the support equipment that holds the electrical wires over the track. That's what powers the train. It's called the catenary. And as they hit that equipment at a great rate of speed, those cars just split open in a way that you really rarely see in train derailments. And that's where most of the dead and wounded came from. We also understand from the National Transportation Safety Board that they have seen a surveillance video that indicates to them that the train was traveling at about 106 miles an hour. No Amtrak train ever reaches a speed like that on these tracks in the Northeast Corridor. And so what we know from that is that for some reason, the train was traveling twice the speed limit when it went through this curve just outside of Philadelphia. That is undoubtedly the reason the train left the tracks. Now, what they're trying to do now that they have surveyed the scene and removed everyone that they can find, they've got these enormous cranes that you might be able to see behind me. They're trying to get the debris off the tracks as safely but as quickly as possible, because this is the busiest rail corridor in all of North America. Tens of thousands of people depend on these tracks, and so they're trying to get it clear. We're told that they have already brought new rails in to replace the damaged rails, but there's still no word yet on when this will be open again. Typically, a National Transportation Safety Board investigation takes about a year. The Safety Board says that they are very interested, obviously, in talking to the engineer who survived with relatively minor injuries. It is only the engineer who will be able to tell them why the train was traveling at more than 100 miles an hour. Vanita?
Scott, do you get some sense for what the next immediate step is in the investigation?
There are a number of pieces of equipment, Vanita, on the train that record what's happening, very much like the flight data recorders that you find on airplanes. There are 2 recorders on the train called event recorders. Now, they take measurements of the train's speed, the braking, various kinds of safety systems, the signal lights, all that sort of thing. Those event recorders, there are 2 of them, have been removed from the wreckage and have been taken to Amtrak headquarters where they will be read out. We may hear more about what came from those event recorders over the next day or so. There's also a camera on the engine that looks forward and records that view of the train as it plies its way from Washington up to New York, and they are going to be downloading that video as well to see what it tells them.
CBS Evening News anchor Scott Pelley. Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you.